So I'm curious. Let's say you are a single woman and you are making sure you're maxing out or at least contributing enough to get your employer match. But then you meet this man and he's not contributing to his retirement savings yet. How do you think about that? Is that a big deal? Should you be concerned?
Yeah, I would be concerned because
Hi, I'm Charlene Reinhart, and I want to welcome you to the Wealthy Women Daily Show, where your net worth is the sum of all the decisions that you make. So, what decisions are you making today to be better than you were yesterday? I'm really excited about today's guest. We have Jovan Johnson here with us. He is the founder of Peace of Wealth Planning, and he is a CPA, PFS, trying to remember all the acronyms, MBA and CFP, and there may be more, but I'm going to bring Jovan up so that he can tell you what those acronyms mean and how he got started. Hi, Jovan.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm really looking to diving into this conversation about women and money. But first, let's hear more about you and your background.
Okay, so currently I have Peace Wealth Planning as the firm that I run with my wife. And in that firm, we essentially help business owners on the business side take care of all their accounting needs. We like to say we're small business advisors. But then also we kind of offer comprehensive financial planning services on the individual side, whether that is investment management, tax planning, retirement planning, estate planning, you name it. So essentially, we're like the personal CFOs when it comes to your individual life. And then also we help small business owners on that side as well. So essentially, that's what I do in the business with my wife. And then I'm also a PhD student at UGA in accounting.
Wow, that's very impressive. And working on money or working with people to help them with their financial situation is so important because we are in an environment where people are losing their homes, they're losing their jobs, their retirement balances are shrinking. And so we need answers. And so I'm so glad that you are there for people. But let's start with the basics. I know you work with women a lot. So, what are some trends that you see among the women that you work with?
So I would say probably, there are many trends, but the biggest trend I see is women are really stepping up and taking over, leadership roles. They're making a lot of money. They're becoming executives, which is awesome. So they're really killing it. And in a lot of households, you'll notice now the woman is the primary breadwinner. And what does that mean? And then also, I would say a lot of single women that reach that status before they find somebody, it becomes challenging to find a spouse when they are at that point where they're making all this money, they're executive, because I think there's an interesting conversation of equally yoked, which we can talk about later, but it's interesting dynamics when you have the women reach that status before they find that significant other.
Ooh, okay. Yes, that is a good conversation to have because when you're a woman and you're being told that you need to work hard, you need to get your education, get a good job, climb the ladder, and then you look around and you don't have a spouse to help you with all of that. And some people are comfortable maybe not having that spouse or that as they climb the ladder, but some people yearn for that. So what are your recommendations? I know that's a hard question to tackle.
Yeah, it really is, because I think it is tough, because I feel like a lot of, in the cases I've seen, men are verbally okay with that if they have a significant other that makes more than them. But I think there are some internal things that may disagree with that, So I think it's very challenging, because I've seen women that, reach that status, make all this money, and they try to date someone that may not make as much. And it is a challenging dynamic. Especially I've seen the other side where they have gotten a divorce and you see that husband trying to tack on to some additional, of that money that woman has built up. So it becomes very interesting. So I would say for a woman, financial literacy and education, on their own is so important, where they have to kind of make sure they have their things in order. What do they want in a man? Do they want that person to be equally yoked? If not, they may need to take some additional steps to protect themselves, because we don't want, if something was to happen, that individual to take everything they built up by themselves.
Yeah, so let's talk about that buildup. Let's start with the individual, right? What should people in general be doing to prepare themselves for a financially secure future or even have a good life right now?
That is true. Yes, I would say right now, you know, regardless of the significant other, the spouse, I would say making sure that assume that you are building for you. You are thinking about retirement for you. So I would say right now, creating savings habits, have a budget set in place. Make sure you are paying yourself first. Start saving towards retirement. Maybe have a taxable account. Building up some investments and assets on your own. Maybe consider, I know some people like to wait until they find their significant other to purchase a home. I would say, maybe you don't have to do that. I would say make a plan now to still purchase your home. So really just making sure that you have your own financial plan set up, assuming that you are single. And then we will deal with adding on that significant other later to that plan if you get to that point. But for now, make sure that you are creating your financial plan. What does your retirement look like? What do you want for you?
I like that because people typically say that you want to meet your significant other at your happiest self, because then you can attract somebody who mirrors that and reflects that. So let's start from the basics. You mentioned savings, budgeting, building on assets, possibly purchasing a home, retirement. And I know a lot of women are probably looking at that or thinking about it and like, whoa, okay, where do I start? So let's talk about the emergency fund. What is that? How much should we put into an emergency fund and why is it needed?
Oh my gosh, emergency fund, like you said, before we dive into anything else, I like to just say it's your safety net. It's your fallback plan. If you have an unexpected expense, emergency, healthcare emergency, you want to have a fallback fund that can take care of you. You don't want to, take on high interest credit card debt or anything like that. So this fund is going to be your safety net for something has unexpectedly happened, and it could blow up your financial situation, but that's going to be there as your fallback. So essentially 3 to 6 months is the typical recommendation for the average situation, but I think that is, it's an okay recommendation, but every individual, I would say it depends on the individual situation. Do you have children? Do you have a stable job? Do you work in a stable career field? So I would say in a typical situation, 3 to 6 months, but I would say for safety and security for some people, 12 months may be a better recommendation. And essentially you're saving, I would say, your essential expenses. So typically you look at your monthly budget, you see how much you spend per month on the essentials to kind of sustain your lifestyle, and you would multiply that times 3, 6, or 12. I'm more in the 12-month ballpark, but I'm a little bit more conservative when it comes to risk. So I would say it just depends on the individual. Do you have kids? Do you have a stable job? Do you have a home? So those kind of decisions will go into figuring out how many months to save for.
So let's say you are single, don't have any kids yet, and you're trying to figure out the best amount of money to put into an emergency fund. So you're looking at your essentials, you're looking at your housing cost, right? Maybe it costs $2,000 to keep up your home. And then maybe your health insurance, your car insurance. Are there any other essentials that we should add to the list? Should we add our hair expenses, hair and nails? Because us ladies like to get our hair and nails done. Should that be included in the emergency fund?
I would say yes, but maybe on the back end. So, like you said, the housing costs, food, utilities, phone bill, travel, car, make sure all those things get in that number first. And then I would say I would add in here and stuff, because I do believe that emergency fund, just me personally, I believe it should encompass things that kind of bring you joy and keep you sane almost. Because I
Yeah.
think that is important.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people think about this because let's say you got laid off and you need to tap into that emergency fund. You might need emergency funds to get your hair done so that you can go out and get that job that you want.
That's so true. No, that is so true. That's why I think, it should be almost mirrored to what you spend. Like, what are you spending right now per month? I would say if you want to put up, be on the safe side, just multiply that times 3, 6, or 12.
Yeah. So let's say we have $5,000. We realize that we are spending $5,000 a month. So if we want a 3-month emergency fund, that's going to be $15,000. Where do we put that money?
I recommend high yield savings account. Some people are more risky, but I think for the average person, they should put it in the high yield savings account. Typically, you want to make sure it's FDIC insured. So you want to have safety. That being insured is going to make sure that anything happens, you will still be able to get that money. It offers liquidity. So that means that at any point when you need this money, it is a quick process to go to the bank, pull it out, send it straight to your checking, then pull it out. But essentially, you should be able to access that money fairly quickly. And then the high yield is going to offer a high interest rate. So I think that's what you want to look for is liquidity, safety, and something that's going to try to keep up with inflation, which high yield savings accounts are pretty good with that. So I would say that is where I would put an emergency fund because you just don't know when an emergency will happen.
Would an emergency fund look different if you are single versus if you are married with kids?
Yes, I would say married with kids. Well, that also depends too. But I would say yes, in the sense that if you're married, if your spouse is, earning a significant wage and they're at a stable job as well, then maybe you could say, okay, let's maybe do 3, 4, or 5 months. I think you have more wiggle room because the chances of you both losing your job at the same time is probably, pretty low. But when you're single, you don't have anybody else to fall back on. So you want to ensure that you have money to sustain you until you find that next job. So I would say typically when you're married, that allows a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to, how many months you want to have saved up. But then kids kind of dampen into that where you want to extend it a little bit because with kids, we know there are a lot of hidden costs, unexpected costs, injuries, healthcare. I mean, there's so much to consider. So I would say kids probably will increase that amount that you want to have saved up.
Now, what's the best way to build up that emergency fund? Because thinking about saving $15,000, $30,000, $45,000 seem like impossible to many people, right? If you don't have a lot of discretionary funds available. So, how do you get started with that? Where do you start?
I like to tell people that it is a recommendation. It is a goal. It is not something that you have to have right now. So I don't want people to feel pressured like, oh man, I don't have the emergency fund. This is something that you're striving to do. You build towards it. It's okay if it takes you 3, 4, 5 years to build that. That is okay. You want to just make sure that you are working towards it. So make sure that it is a part of your budget line item. Start small, see what you can afford to save in it. And then just kind of set goals where you're like, okay, every month I'm going to put, I don't know, $300 in it per month. Yes, that's only $3,600 per year, but you look up 5 years, you have an emergency fund built up. So I would say start small, use any kind of windfalls that would kind of speed up that process, whether that's a bonus, a raise, tax refund, credit card, cash reward points are pretty good that you can, automatically redeem $25, $50 per month to send to that account. So I would say just take it slow. It's not something that you need all at once. Just make sure it's like a monthly automated savings that's going into that to build it up.
So, since building an emergency fund could take months or years, should I be working on other financial goals while I'm building up that fund?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I would definitely say while you're building, maybe I like to say when it comes to retirement, if you have a match offered, at least contribute to get the match, you get the free money. So I would say that's something that I would do regardless if I'm building an emergency fund, paying off credit card debt, get that match. That is something that you want to do. So I would say it takes juggling. You want to do a couple things at once. You don't want to just like throw all your money at the emergency fund. You want to do that a little bit, maybe save towards retirement, pay off credit card debt. And then of course, if you have other big goals like saving towards a home. So again, it comes back to creating an intentional budget. Starting with, okay, if I make this per month, I want to make sure that every dollar is accounted for, whether that's being saved, spent on necessary expenses, fun expenses. I would just make sure that every dollar is accounted for in your budget.
Create an intentional budget. I like that. And I realize that you don't always have to create the budget on your own. You mentioned employer benefits like a 401k. If your employer offers a match, take advantage of it because that can help you save for your retirement. You don't have to take on that task on your own. I like to think of it as having a wealth partner, right?
That is
Look
awesome.
around and see who are your wealth partners on this journey so that you can get
Mm.
help building your portfolio. I love it. Can you talk more about the employer sponsored benefits? Because that may be news to some people. I know when I started working in corporate America, I didn't understand how a 401k worked, how vesting worked. And if I was actually saving enough, people were saying, make sure you're saving enough for retirement. Well, how much do I need
That
40
is,
years from now when I retire? Can you break that down for us?
yeah, that is so important. So essentially, if you have this benefit, there are many employer-sponsored benefits that you want to, take advantage of, such as 401k or 403b. If you are working for the government or a nonprofit, you may see a 403b or a 457 plan. But essentially, they're very similar: 401k, 403b, 457. So essentially, you are able to make pre-tax contributions. Sometimes Roth contributions are after-tax contributions. So essentially, you would be able to save pre-tax dollars into this account. So that means that you are not going to pay any taxes on the dollars that are going in. You'll worry about that later in retirement. So this is one way to have tax savings, because we know when you're getting your salary payments, that I think that shocks people the most once they get their first paycheck, is to see how much is taken out of taxes. So if you want to look for a way to reduce that, why not save towards retirement into these employer sponsored retirement plans? Some employers offer a match. So what that means is, of course, it depends on what kind of match they offer, but that's free money. You say, I contribute this amount, and then my employer is going to contribute X amount as well. So like you say, you have a wealth partner. So that's just one employer sponsored benefit that can really help you save money on taxes and save towards retirement. They do have others, such as the HSA, the FSA, but that's some other strategies that can be utilized to save on taxes.
So I'm curious. Let's say you are a single woman and you are making sure you're maxing out or at least contributing enough to get your employer match. But then you meet this man and he's not contributing to his retirement savings yet. How
Mm.
do you think about that? Is that a big deal? Should you be concerned?
Yeah, I would be concerned, because the thing is, when you have a spouse, now it becomes a joint retirement. And of course, always recommend doing some kind of retirement plan or projection, whether that's through a financial advisor. They have some that you can do online yourself. Sometimes your company offers, some kind of, I guess, employer benefit where you can get that done. But I would say that's probably step one, is doing a retirement projection to see, you want to retire by X age. You're currently contributing this amount per month. Your average return is this. Am I meeting that threshold, or do I need to make some adjustments to reach my ideal retirement? So that would be step one. But the issue is, when you have a spouse, the expenses in retirement will now be doubled, if not more. And if they're not saving towards retirement, you still, now you have to fund retirement for two people versus one, which is going to put pressure on you to save more towards retirement accounts. So I would say that would create some issues if you guys plan to live and pay for retirement expenses together. So I think that would create a lot of issues where, it's kind of all on you to fund that retirement lifestyle.
So we talked about emergency fund and looking at your employer sponsored benefits. Should you meet with a financial advisor or planner before you get married to discuss those two pieces of the financial plan?
I would say yes, if you're comfortable with that. I would say you can reach out to a financial planner on your own, or if that is, overwhelming. Sometimes companies do have, some company that they work with where you can access a financial planner. But I do think it is necessary and helpful to You don't have to hire them for ongoing services, but just sit down initially to have them kind of look at, okay, this is what you have, this is what you're thinking, these are some of your goals, and they can kind of help you put a comprehensive plan together to help you have the necessary steps and actions to take to reach your goals. Because the thing is, you don't have to do it all by yourself. It is overwhelming. You don't want to miss out on, some opportunities or some of the financial pieces. You don't want to overlook that. So it's always good to have a third party come in, see what you have, see what your goals are, and just make sure that you're doing everything you need to do to achieve those goals.
I have to ask you this question because many people are dating more in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Is this a question to bring up on the first date? Should you ask about somebody's retirement accounts anywhere from the first date or to the 10th date? Is that a topic?
First date, probably not, but eventually when it gets serious, sadly I do think that is a conversation to have because it impacts you and your lifestyle and what you're spending your money on. And I know if you don't talk about it in the early stages, it probably can and will become a problem because, it impacts your lifestyle. If they're not saving towards retirement and you were, traveling the world, you're going to international places once every quarter. Now you might have to sacrifice 2 of those trips to help, catch them up on retirement. So I think conversations should be had because it impacts you and your lifestyle. And we all know as we get older, it's very hard to be willing to adjust our lifestyle.
That's a good point. So the partner that you date or marry could potentially impact the lifestyle that you have later on. So you have to be crystal clear about the lifestyle you want and determine if that person, maybe on the first date, if that person aligns with the lifestyle you think you want 10, 20, 30 years from now.
100%. Oh yeah, that's so important. I think that's probably the biggest hurdle that I see women have to overcome when they reach that status. They have a certain lifestyle they want to maintain. You come in with somebody that may make 1/3 of what you make, and they may be more frugal. They may not spend a lot because they don't make a lot. How do you make that work? That's very challenging.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about emergency fund, employer-sponsored benefits like 401ks for retirement. What's next on that financial ladder?
So on the financial ladder, like you said, you take care of the emergency fund, you have the retirement set up. Then next up, I would say you are thinking about things such as, do you want to purchase a home or do you want to rent? Because I know that is actually pretty popular with some single women that make decent money. They choose to rent instead of buy a home, which, we can discuss some of those reasons I've heard. But I would say thinking about buying a home, or maybe you want to think about opening up a taxable brokerage account where you can have I like to call it can be a retirement early account. It can be anything you want it to be. Maybe you just want to have investments growing that you can tap into before age 59 and a half. Or maybe you want to create, that fund for something else. But essentially, I would start thinking about things such as, the home, a taxable brokerage account, and thinking about other things you want to do outside of only retirement, emergency fund. Of course, you want to think about estate planning and all that as well.
Okay, so we have the taxable brokerage account, and it's pretty easy to get a taxable brokerage account now. You can go online, put your information in, and ta-da, you have an account. I think the hardest part is selecting what assets you want to add to your account. Is that when a financial planner should be called upon to help with that if you have no financial education or no experience with investing?
I would say yes, but I also would challenge anyone to still try to obtain that knowledge themselves. Just the basics. You don't have to understand it all, but I would say even before approaching a financial planner, just try to understand the basics. I don't believe in just hiring somebody with zero knowledge, because I wouldn't want anybody to be taken advantage of, or some advisors are not. They will charge you a lot of fees. So I would say try to learn the basics before you even approach a financial planner. But that would be one option, is approach a financial planner. Or some people are very simplistic where they can just pick a target date fund or something very simple and just let it ride. So there are options for people that are like, I don't want to hire a planner, but I want to keep it simple, hands off as much as possible. They have options for that as well. So you can have an advisor help you choose investments. You can research it, do it yourself, or some advisors can just help you on an hourly basis where they can just give you recommendations. That's an option as well.
Can you explain the basics of the options that you have? Because I know that can be overwhelming to start with. Like, do I need a target date fund, an index fund? What is an ETF? Should I invest in individual stocks? Where does someone start their investing journey?
I would say it comes down to risk tolerance. So you have to know yourself. Are you very tolerant when it comes to risk? How do you feel about the stock market? If we have a recession, are you the type where I'm comfortable with if I see negative 30%, my money's down 30%? Or are you more on the lines of, I would be more comfortable with 10%? So I would say kind of they have surveys online that you can, kind of fill out, but essentially determine your risk tolerance will be one. And then two, timeline. Are you 20 trying to save for 60? Or are you 45 trying to save for 60? Because those are two different things. Timeline is going to impact the type of investments you need to consider as well. So I would say timeline, risk tolerance, and then purpose for the funds. I think those three, you want to start answering those three questions, and that will kind of help you determine, okay, now let me think about what investment options works best for that.
Should a person have a certain amount of money before they invest?
No, no, 100% no. I would say some advisors are, they have requirements, but there are ways around that. There are some advisors that don't care about that. They just want to help you on an hourly basis. But no, I don't care if you have $100, $1,000. There's no limitations on when you should get started investing. The thing that you want is compound interest. You want time. That's what you want. It's not about the amount of money, it's the time.
So get started as soon as possible with any amount that you have, right? Start where you are. You don't need thousands to get started. If you have $10, you can transfer that money from your checking account to your taxable brokerage account and keep those recurring transfers going so that when you're ready to go shopping and buy your favorite assets, you can tap into your account and make that transaction.
I agree, 1000%.
Definitely. Is there anything else that we should consider? So we have an emergency fund, employer-sponsored benefits, taxable brokerage account, finding out if you need or if you want a home or to rent. Did we talk about paying off debt? I think you meant no. I think that's a big one. Some people are like, I can't do any of that because I'm in debt.
Yeah, that is I feel like when you're in debt, the challenge is credit card, if it's high interest debt, the credit card interest rates, honestly, they outpace any kind of mortgage rate. They outpace the average return rate you can get. So the return on each dollar in a lot of cases will be much higher if you have to pay off the credit card interest debt. So if you have some kind of credit card debt or high interest debt, whether that's from a personal loan, I would say you need to fit that into this conversation, into the budget, and make that a priority, because again, the return on each dollar is going to be higher for you to pay off that debt versus saying, okay, let me start investing and doing all these other things. So if you have debt in the picture, I would say then you want to make sure you're still saving towards emergency fund. I don't care if you have debt. You want to tackle that debt, but still save towards that emergency fund, because that's just a necessity no matter what. You still want to get that match. I tell people, even with debt, you want to pay off the debt, but still get that match because that's free money. And then after you get the match in the emergency fund, I would say turn your attention to focusing on paying down that debt. And then once you get the debt to a reasonable point, then we can start thinking about investing outside of the retirement account.
Now, let's say you become debt free. How does that impact the way you go into a relationship? If you notice that a potential partner has debt, is that an automatic no, stay away from that person, or find out their game plan, work with a financial planner to see if they have the potential to pay that off, or if it could potentially impact you in the long term?
Yeah, I would 100% say it does matter. Also, it depends on what kind of debt, because if it's student loan debt, essentially you'll see how that impacts, some people decide on how they want to file for taxes. It impacts all of that. If you file single versus married. So it makes it very complicated when somebody does have debt. So I would say before you want to get married to that person, that is a serious conversation you want to have of like, okay, how is this person going to handle this debt? Or as a team, maybe you're okay with kind of joining up with that person and saying, okay, I'm okay with us jointly tackling this debt. Or you want to determine if you want that person to handle themselves, that's a conversation you need to have. Maybe work with a third party like a financial planner so you can make sure that you're on one accord. If they're going to pay that debt, make sure they have it a part of their budget and it's not going to impact your lifestyle and how you're going to live your life. So I would say talking with that person to determine, is this going to be a joint goal or this is going to be something that they need to tackle individually, even if you guys decide to get married.
And debt also impacts your credit score. So when should we have the credit score conversation with a potential partner?
I would say definitely when the dating comes serious. I think that is a conversation you want to have because credit score just impacts so many different things, whether that's, if you're buying a home, the interest rate for your home, whether that's opening up a business credit card, personal credit card, if you want to buy a rental property. It just impacts so many different things where if that individual has debt and they're not paying that debt on time or they are defaulting on debt, that's going to impact your credit score as a married couple if you filing jointly. So you just want to think about, have that conversation. If they have debt, it's not that it's a bad thing and you shouldn't get married because if they're paying it on time and they're taking care of it, their credit should still be fine. So it's just the conversation that you should have before things get very serious.
I think we need an entire conversation talking about debt and credit and how to manage that if you are going into a relationship with somebody who may not be familiar with that process. So that's a separate conversation that I would love to dive into later. But it sounds like we need a checklist for women. Like if you are looking at all these things, if you are getting your financial house in order, you're making sure you're checking the box on your emergency fund, employer sponsored benefits, thinking about your long-term housing plans, and everything else we discussed. What should we expect in a partner? Are we being too hard on someone if we have this long list of to-dos for someone we are looking to marry?
See, I would say, I feel like that at the end of the day, the woman kind of has to focus on herself and have her own goals going for herself because even if they meet that partner, I still feel like they shouldn't have to alter their lifestyle. So I don't fault the woman. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is okay for you to have your goals that you're, achieving and you have high expectations for a spouse. I think that is okay because you have built up this lifestyle for yourself. You deserve to continue living that lifestyle. If you're willing to make sacrifices or changes, then that's different. But I think that is okay to have high expectations for a significant other just to see if they're equally yoked and, they're on par with the game plan. I think that is totally fine. It's just all about communicating that with the individual.
Okay, I know some women are probably wondering this. They're like, okay, I want to get my finances in order and I will have my finances in order. So how do I find a mate who's going to match that? What are the to-dos? Are there certain organizations to join? Are there certain conferences to attend? What's the secret sauce, Jovan?
I think the tough part is try to see how this. So it depends on the thing is we all have preferences. So I feel like, okay, for example, if you are a Black woman and you're killing it and you're making a lot of money and you achieved a certain level and you're an executive, the thing is it depends on the scope of what you're looking for. So of course you want them equally yoked when it comes to finances, preferably. So maybe they don't have to make as much as you, but they have kind of their things together. And then if you're looking for example, a Black male. So now I feel like your pool is limited because if you want equally yoked, financial situation is kind of similar, and you're looking for a Black male, I think the pool is limited. So I would just say you might have to expand the scope of your preferences and what you're looking for, possibly. If not, I feel like you might have to join organizations where you can meet people of similar status, possibly. I feel like that's probably the most challenging part is a lot of the women at that status have limited scope of what they're looking for. So it's already hard enough to find somebody, of financial status that's similar to yours. So I think that makes probably the biggest challenge of how do I find somebody that meet my preferences. We have look preferences. They got to have a certain financial status. Of course, they got to be a certain age. That's why once you limit all that, your scope is very small of, meeting someone.
That's a lot to consider. If
Yeah.
anyone has any questions for Jovan, please type them in the comments because I'm sure there are so many questions about dating and finances and marriage and retirement, so much to think about. But I am so grateful that you came on the Wealthy Women Daily Show, Jovan, to discuss this much needed topic. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Lastly, I would just say that there are some people that it's okay that if you do choose to get married and you both have reached certain statuses, it's okay to kind of craft your own lane. Like some people decide, okay, let's keep everything separate, or maybe we keep some things separate, some things jointly. I feel like there are ways to make it work, even with different, financial statuses. Even if somebody makes way more than the other, there are ways to make it work. You can decide to keep things separate. At the end of the day, I think you have to decide what works best for you and your spouse, because it may be worth it. There have been marriages that have worked that way. So I think it's just to, determine what works best for you and your significant other. So it's very possible.
This was so good. Some of my key takeaways were having an emergency fund, but really being holistic with what that fund looks like and what it entails. So having your hair expenses included in your emergency fund so that you can go out and get that next job opportunity if you need it. But also talking to a financial planner who can help you and your spouse on this journey, because it can be complicated trying to determine if you should weigh love higher than money. How should you, I don't want to say this, but how should you grade your potential spouse? Right?
Yeah.
Should there be a report card? But having a third party can really help you think about this in an intentional way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
Follow Jovan on LinkedIn at jovanjohnson.com. And Jovan, can you provide your website?
Oh, yes. Thank you. It would be www.piece, that's peaceofwealthplanning.com.
All right. Thanks, Jovan. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you so much.